Welcome to the Alfalfa podcast. Merry Christmas. These days, you're not allowed to say Merry Christmas unless you preface it with, to those that are celebrating. I would like to wish a very happy Christmas. So yes, I would like to adjust that statement to say to those that are celebrating this great American holiday, Merry Christmas. Let's be sensitive to the needs of others. No, okay. I'll be... Let me be a little more direct with this. Well, first of all, welcome to another episode. We're excited. Hope you guys all had a great holiday. There's been a lot on our minds in terms of the topic we're going to be covering today. I will quickly shill the Discord again, since it's been popping in there, alfalfapod.com. Hop in our Discord and also support our booze habit with Dry Farms Wine as well. The code is below for that. You can get a nice little gift case for somebody or pick up a little 6-pack, 12-pack of wines for yourself. That's what we drink whenever we're together. We are not together right now. I miss you guys.
I miss Dry Farms Wine.
Yeah. I'm pumped for this. I feel like this is going to be one of those just like exploratory conversations about things that grind our gears, because there's a lot of these items lately in this last year that really do grind the gears. And look, what I've been thinking about personally is just I'm kind of over it. I'm just over all of this constant culture war stuff. Every single topic in the world is politicized, and there's no way to talk about anything anymore without that sort of instant polarization that comes into effect, that is based on the identity that the person seems to hold at that time. And for most people, that's been very fixed throughout most of their lives. They have been programmed to and indoctrinated to take on a certain set of beliefs, and they bring those beliefs to you into the conversation in such a way as if it's original thought. And of course it is not. And I think my overall problem is just, we sit here on this pod and we talk about a lot of things that are, relevant to the culture wars. And we'll talk about some of those examples today. But I don't know, man. I'm just over it. I'm over dunking on everybody. I'm over pointing out how stupid, which by the way, we're not even allowed to call people stupid or things stupid anymore, according to Stanford. We'll talk about that. I mean, we're outlawing words. We're not having a conversation to any degree whatsoever anymore. And the only place of real, true, the only solace I can find is this podcast. This is the only place and the only group of people that I can have conversations with where we can actually dig into things and swim in the messy gray for a bit without it being, and allow it to be productive to a certain degree. I'm just over the whole thing, and I don't know how to solve it. And that's part of why I wanted to have this conversation personally, is I feel like all that's happening is we're just continuing to discuss the latest trend in the culture war, but it's not getting anywhere. It's not leading to any sort of solution around how do we find the bridges? How do we build the bridges in the middle for us as a society to even be able to take any step forward whatsoever? So I don't know if that's helpful. That's just what's been on my mind.
What are you defining as a culture war? I feel like it'd be good to kind of get specific about what you want to dig into. What is a culture war? What does that mean?
I think everyone would define that differently, and there's a lot of, I'm sure you have something, Stephen, on that. But to me, it's an ideological battle that is taking place between giving your responsibilities up to your responsibility for thinking and your rights as an individual up to a representative in a collective and or an individual representative, versus the person who says no representative will ever be able to determine what is best for me. And so what you really have is a political battle between the collective and the individual. And the collective is made up of a lot of individuals who and both sides, I want to make it clear, even though one is saying, I support the rights of the individual, they are not free of group thinking. They are not immune to the same issues that a person on the left will face, because there's many forms of group thinking that then trickle down to the individual, that cause the individual to hold a belief that is also extremely biased and comes from a place of just indoctrination and brainwashing. That's the way I see it. I think that's like really where the crosshairs are at in our society. It's the right and the left. It's the beliefs that they each hold, and it is extremely opposing and becomes more and more opposing over time.
Is there a specific thing that you yourself have like waded into by any chance, where you were like, oh God, I just stepped on a hornet's nest and I don't like this?
Well, I remember when Eric said in like a recent Money episode, he was like, fuck, like for the first time, like, with the media, with SBF, like I just feel like I've just witnessed how ridiculous this all is, and that we're just like swimming in a sea of bullshit and corruption. I think that was a great example of like what's been happening. But there's so many things. I think COVID is probably the best example of the human brain just like completely malfunctioning, and no one is in the pursuit of what is actually true, but rather everyone is in the pursuit of what is just for their group and meets the needs and outcomes of that group that they're part of, and they're attempting to. It's like they want to win. They want their ideas to win. I don't know. There's so many examples.
I think maybe the way I sort of see it is that it's like a broad term for we're like battling over like the moral guidelines of society, a battle over where you want to draw the lines of like the Overton window, I guess, in a way. I guess that's what you would define it as. Like, to me, I don't know how much the SBF stuff falls into it, but like you mentioned like the battle over language, the battle over like sexual ideology is obviously like
gender
is like a huge thing. There's a lot to cover here, so I want to make sure we kind of zero in on what exactly it is. Otherwise, we're not going to have like a super productive discussion. And I feel like we could go a lot of ways with this. Like, do you want to talk about like why this is happening, like where this even came from? Well, because it feels like it wasn't always like this, right? It feels like it's.
I know.
It's
I mean, I'm
up.
personally frustrated and over it, but like I think it is still fun to like look at some of these examples, and I think one of the things we do well is we look at how ridiculous and insane some of these takes are, and bring that kind of like radically moderate perspective to the matter, which I think we should do. And then I would just like to kind of get to a point in the conversation where I feel like I have some hope, to say like, what is actually the solution here going forward to create a space in society where we go back to the way things used to be. And maybe, let me rephrase that, not back to the way things used to be, because what got us here will not get us to the next stage of our evolution. What does the future really look like? What does a healthy future look like after we exit this stage of volatility? I actually see this lasting for the rest of the decade, for the most part. I think.
Hold on, let's get to some examples, because I think we're kind of like having trouble identifying exactly what we're talking about here.
Yeah, my head's always in the theory in the cloud. So yeah, bring it down to some.
Trying to wrangle Armand in here. Yeah, I mean, I feel like when you say go back to the way things used to be, like I can already hear like my super lefty friends, their little antennas going up. They're like, "What do you mean the way they used to be? Like, you want to make America great again? The way like it used to be? Like what? When black people couldn't own houses? You want to go back to then? Because I think the perspective of the left is that they're fighting battles for things that are worthwhile. They're like believe in this stuff. Like I think most of the people are not like cynical. I think there's a good argument to make that people like use this stuff cynically as a ploy for power. Especially people in higher positions. But I think the people on the ground like fighting these battles like believe in this stuff, right? Like, so let's take one of the things on your little list here, right? Because I know you're kind of irritated by this. We saw the talk of there being a black female James Bond, and this seemed to grind your gears a little bit. So,
well, I don't know.
Why,
This one was not even on my list. This was one of the things you guys said you're going to tell me about. Like I don't even know about this.
And when I told you about it, you said, "Oh my god!"
I said,
you
"Save
got
it
up,
for the
you
pod."
left, you went outside, you took a walk. I think you
What?
took a cold shower after.
Drink a tea.
I think you journaled for 3 hours and then you came back.
Wait, hold on. So can we give some context here? Is there going to be a new James Bond after Daniel Craig? And is this James Bond slated already, casted to be a black woman? Is this
Yes.
These are true facts?
In the last Bond franchise release, I think it was the 25th movie. It was called No Time to Die. There's a character called Nomi, and she inherits the 007 title. So obviously her name isn't James Bond, but she inherits the 007 character, and it's by an actress, Lashana Lynch. And so the assumption is that in the next series, it will no longer be a, white male as a British male as like a James Bond character.
I'm just thinking that wasn't the black woman who played Moneypenny in those James Bond series, is it?
No, I don't believe so. This is a totally different character.
Yeah, we're just going all in on black women here.
Yeah.
So is Bond dead? It's like it's
well, Bond died. He actually did die in the latest movie.
Spoiler
Oh, God,
alert!
Spoiler.
Yeah, well,
Wait,
it's been
why
out
have I
for
not
5
seen that
years.
yet? Oh my God! Yeah, that's a real.
So the only reason they killed Bond could be, fact
To
check
get
this,
more
but-
black women, open the stage up for more black women.
No, that's
mean,
not what I was gonna say.
He is kind of like the ultimate defier of some new values that we like to put in place. He kind of gets to break the rules often with women. He's a womanizer. He shows lots of displays of violence. So maybe not someone we want as our
Like a
hero
disrespect of
going
authority to his to his boss.
He's a very specific target, right? Like he's like the embodiment of like the entitled white colonizing male, womanizing, just doing all the bad white man stuff, right?
So I got a question. Was James Bond a book first? Like a lot of these movies are like books first. So the way that it was originally written was as this.
Ian Fleming.
Yeah, it's Ian Fleming. It's an old British guy. Like he just wanted to tell a story about a specific thing. And first of all, the reason Bond died, spoiler alert, is because Daniel Craig is so popular, such a good Bond, maybe second or third greatest Bond of all time. And to get him to come back, he resented the role. He's a serious actor. Daniel Craig is a real actor. And he resents the Bond role because it's not a serious enough role. It's not a complex enough role. And the only way he was willing to come back was a tremendous amount of money. And if he killed the character so that there was no way he could actually come back for another.
Are we all in consensus that Sean Connery is the best Bond of all time?
I mean, I am.
Yes, that's obvious.
I am.
I mean, he's amazing.
Here's the thing about this topic, and we could also correlate this to the topic of like Little Mermaid, right? So we have a new Little Mermaid coming out, and the Little Mermaid is going to be a black girl. So it's the same idea. And I guess the question I have is, should stories evolve? Should characters in stories evolve with the times, or should they be left alone? That's really the crux of the question.
A
lot of people get upset about the integrity of the story changing. When you read, let me give an example of what this could be in a thing that hasn't happened yet. If you woke up one day and Harry Potter was a redheaded boy, how would that make you feel? Because if you read the books, the first book is so specific in describing how Harry Potter looks. It's like a key part of the character. And so they actually didn't do a great job casting Harry Potter, because Harry Potter is supposed to have jet black hair. He has brown hair in the movie. Radcliffe, right? So they got close enough, but imagine if they cast him as a redhead. People would get upset. So the question becomes, is it okay to do that in the name of like evolution of people and ideas and inclusion and diversity? Or do you just leave it alone and apply that to new ideas and new stories where you want to see the future unfold the way you want it to unfold?
Is this similar to like the female Ghostbusters? Wasn't there like a female Ghostbusters movie? Is this kind of like in the same line of
It
thinking?
is the same. Stephen, what was that story?
Well, the female Ghostbusters was just terrible. They're like this original movie, which is really cool and funny, and it has Bill Murray and stuff in it, and it's great. What if we just did it because we want women on the screen in this? It had like no purpose for doing, and it was really. It wasn't so much that the movie had women in it, I think, that pissed people off. It was that it was so bad. It made sort of no apologies for being bad. And it was trying to cram an ideology down your throat, the throat of people who just like Ghostbusters, right? And I think people are like reacting to that. So there's some nuance here, right? It depends the context of what you're changing and the story and the why that you're changing it, and also the how that you do it, right? Like I don't think having a black Little Mermaid is like that big of a deal. I think it's a bit of a pattern interrupt because nobody ever thinks of mermaids as being black. But like I don't know if there's like this like universally like agreed upon definition of like what a mermaid is, and I don't know that it changes like a mermaid that much, right? But when you do stuff like in the Lord of the Rings series, right? Like you take the elves and you just make a bunch of them like Asian or like people of color. Like it's not like a generic elf. It's like the elves that Tolkien wrote into a book in a made up fantasy land where these people are just all like Aryan white power motherfuckers, right? They're just running around with their long blonde hair, shooting arrows and stuff. It's like a white people. So when you do that, it just looks weird to people. You're altering their world a bit. You're altering the work of the original artist. But the reason you're doing it, I don't think it doesn't add any artistic merit to the series to do that. It's just like, we literally did this to flex on you and shove like a particular ideology down your throat. So that rubs people the wrong way. And the Bond one is tricky too, because it's not exactly James Bond because they killed him, but it's kind of James Bond. But like that one is weird. Like James Bond is James Bond. Like that character, people like him because he's this like cartoonized version of masculinity, right? Like however out of date it might be, that's just a thing people like in the character and they get attached to it. And you shouldn't be just like killing people's characters off that they love just so that you can like make a point or do something. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And like a female can't really be James Bond. Like if you react differently to like a man on the screen, like womanizing, than you do to like a woman on the screen doing the stuff James Bond does. It's just like a natural thing with you as like a human. Like we just expect men and women to behave like sort of like differently on the screen. And like I guess you could say that you're doing some artistic play and like challenging stereotypes or something, but like people probably won't like it. And then you
I got some
turn
simple
around
questions.
and blame
Simple
the people for
question.
not liking
Simple
it.
question is this: has the demand for people that want to watch James Bond died? Because they continue to make them and they continue to be top box sellers. So like, why are we changing what James Bond is? It's not because of a lack of demand. So it has to be some push, right? It's a push from like this like woke side of things, right? Like that's what it's stemming from.
Could not be higher for
demand is super high for James Bond as
like
we
James
recognize
Bond.
James Bond. So there's this push from this woke side, and I guess my question then is like, is that like a majority, or is that just like a vocal minority?
Go ahead, Nick. That is the culture war. What you just said. Like that's it. It's that battle of like who's gonna win, who's gonna shape the narrative.
But I'd actually argue that James Bond is like this example of James Bond turning into a female black woman is actually a good example of like where it is the result of artistic development of the movie. it's not James. She's not going to be named James Bond. She's going to be 007 in her own character. They're actually killing off the character. And it may be because they have a business angle. Like you said, Daniel Craig is so popular that whoever they put in there is probably just going to flop. It's like, who are you going to put in after Jon Stewart, who
Tom
just
Hardy.
crushed the Daily show?
Well, dude, they've had like fucking
Tom
19
Hardy.
of them, and the series still exists.
Yeah,
I don't like that argument. I understand if it was going to be an offshoot. You want to build an offshoot about the character and what happened in the last movie, and you want to have a black girl who plays 007. Absolutely. Beautiful. No problem. But why kill James Bond completely? Like, why end this series that's been on air for 70, 80 years? Like, we've been making movies.
Well, I think that's a
80
different
years.
thing, though. Like, and I think
That is a
actually, like,
different
I feel like I agree more with Nick than you here. Like, if they're gonna change James Bond, like, I would rather have like. This is why I'm torn on what they're doing. Like, on the one hand, it's like not the character I love, but on the other hand, it's not supposed to be that character. They are evolving it. They're just using the 007 to connect it, and then maybe it's a new thing that people will connect to in a different way. I would rather have them do that and evolve it and just make it different than be like, this is Bond now, but Bond is a black woman. And
Okay, I agree with that.
suck
But
it,
so
you
how
know?
about
Like, it's-
maybe
it's-
we're
it's
splitting
different.
hairs here? But what about like you mentioned the Tolkien elves? How about like the George R.R. Martin's Targaryens, right? Like those, like George R.R. Martin's still alive, and like he has to give licensing rights to whoever creates these shows, right? So like he's giving approval to make these Targaryens, who are quite like elves, frankly. They're just like pale white-haired things, but then we made them black now. I
Yeah,
think-
the Targaryens are they are the whitest people in like all of literature, I feel.
and we're not
They're
calling
so
that like an offshoot, like how we're saying like this is now different 007, not James Bond. Like we're saying those are the Targaryens.
I mean, people were still kind of like, okay, like I'm not racist. It's just like, why are you doing this? Like, I don't.
Right.
know
What's
if you're-
the incentive
what's the-
other than wokeism?
Yeah, like what's the value here? Like, what do you do? Like, and I think that's fair to people question. I also think it's different if like it's Tolkien's, if not Tolkien, if it's R. Martin's stuff, and he's alive, and he's like, yeah, like I think I'm gonna work this in with my story. It's fine. Versus
Totally.
like Tolkien is like he's gone, right? He
Right.
wrote this stuff. It's like almost like a sacred work of literature to a lot of people. And then somebody's just coming on and put it on TV, and they're like, "No, we're gonna just change the color of these people because we want to because like diversity." Like I understand why that rubs.
But I'm
people the
guessing
wrong way.
that
It's not
that
done in an
authority
intelligent
transfers
way.
to his estate, right? Like his heirs now make those decisions, and it becomes the same thing. Like they agreed to it, probably.
I think as we were talking, I think I kind of settled on why this irks me a little bit. Like when I see this, when the changing of characters in the name of equality happens, and it doesn't have anything to do with the artistic development of like a creative piece of work. And I think I landed on it as we're talking because the common criticism with kind of the whole woke movement is it oversimplifies things, right? And it also is often more divisive. You know, they're kind of claiming to beat divisiveness, but often it's divisive in itself. But I think the main criticism against wokeism is that it's performative, right? And this seems to be like the cliche quintessential example of performative. Like I don't know if it necessarily pushes actual equality forward, but it is mostly performative to put certain races or genders or political biases into creative works that obviously feel a little left out. And maybe that's why it just catches my radar a little bit because it's the
I think there's
definition of
something
performative.
I think there's something else too, Nick. It's not just performative and sort of cheap and empty in that way. But the reason it irks a lot of people is because no matter how forward thinking you are, nobody has a problem with that. You know, capitalism solves for that. If you want to see something in the world and you can create it and you can create demand for it and you can generate revenue for it and people will come and watch your movie or read your book, fucking fantastic. Do it. You live in a free country. People have a line and they haven't been able to communicate this appropriately. And the line that they have is, don't change the past. Don't erase the past. These examples that we're talking about, we did an episode one time on Columbus. And one of the things we got into in the nitty gritty was like this desire to change the past and bring the present day ethics and morals into the past. This same thing applies with James Bond. James Bond was completely okay in every single way for his time and has been. And arguably there is a market for him today as well, still, that will, as we just discussed, will sell like crazy. If you bring a suave British gentleman onto the screen to play that character, maybe Tom Hardy, a lot of people talked about it could be Tom Hardy, to play that character, it will fucking sell. Now, will a different version of the James Bond story, of the 007 story, sell just as good or less or better with this new character? Maybe, absolutely. Let's let the market decide. But don't change the past. Don't change my character. Don't evolve the basic story. Like, don't change the integrity of the story. That's the problem people have with the Black Little Mermaid. It's the same.
I see that angle.
You don't need to change who the Little Mermaid is to tell this story. You can tell a new story. Sorry, I'll let you. I'll give it to you in a second, Aaron.
Like I see that angle, but I think there's another angle, and this is like what irks me is that you make these decisions based on race. It's like race forward decisions, and that to me feels racist. It
is. And there's a way to do it effectively, though. Like one of the great movies in the last few years is Black Panther. What a amazing movie. Build a new fucking story about the empowerment of people and what you want to see. Like Black Panther is a great example of that. Leave the other shit alone.
Parasite won an Oscar or something. Like Parasite was a great movie. Featured Asians,
Korean,
you know, and what's that? Crazy Rich Asians did very well. Like it's a good Asian movie. Like just have that.
Can I ask you something though?
Like if you want to see boss women, like I mean, I have so many examples. Molly's Game, such a good movie. Like if you want to show a woman who's like a gangster, you want to show that, show it. Like do it, but don't change the characters that already existed. That's the line.
Armand, like would you care if they made the Little Mermaid like taller?
That's completely different.
Why is it different though?
It is different. Unless, I don't know. Well, it would be different unless, it would be okay if the Little Mermaid, well, here's the trouble with the Little Mermaid is actually
like, what can we change? I guess a better question is like, what can we change in the Little Mermaid? That's sort of like a superficial thing.
I'm not sure about the Little Mermaid because that's a tough one. If the book or the story is specific about the character and the look of the character, then changing the character is egregious. So Harry Potter being redheaded or black or brown or whatever would be egregious. That because it was specifically stated by the author, this is what the character looks, acts, feels like. The Little Mermaid, there is no. So no, I think the answer to the Little Mermaid one is tough because, as you said, like what is a fucking mermaid anyway? It could be any color, it could be any shape. It might as well be green. Yeah. Why is the Little Mermaid not green skin color, really? Is the right way that the mermaid should have been done in the first place. But James Bond, that's different, man. And things like Harry Potter, that's different. And The Lord of the Rings, as you described, that's different. The Little Mermaid one's tough, though. And if you don't describe something, if you make it taller, shorter, fatter, skinnier, then that should be fine, I think.
Can I take the other side of this argument or try to? I mean, I kind of have my own retort to it, but if I was on the other side of this argument, I would be kind of thinking about children, future generations. And I would say that we have a set of heroes that have kind of been interwoven in our culture, whether in literature or movies or anything else in music. And there's a set of heroes, and maybe those heroes don't necessarily represent like how things actually are. Maybe they're kind of swayed in one way from previous generations. And are there enough, Asian American, Black American heroes for children of the same kind of race to look up to? And maybe that there's not enough of those heroes or idols or role models to look up to. So what is the harm in kind of changing the race or gender or language spoken of a
I think
hero
the intention
to
matters.
kind of inspire
It's
them?
like making it race forward is again my problem. It's literally racist. I think people would have a problem if we made the Black Panther a white guy.
Yes, 100%. That's what I said to my wife when we talked about this a few days ago. It's like, are you kidding me? If the Black Panther was suddenly white, that would be ridiculous.
White Panther.
It would just be ridiculous. So, Nick, I agree with you. Like, what you're saying is beautiful. Just don't change the past. Like, do it forward thinking. Like, build things like, yes, we need more Asian, brown, everything type of heroes. Sure. But like that's why you create a movie like Black Panther.
But
That's
are
why-
you upset that? What about Captain America is black now, right? Like, is that bad?
I don't even know about that. I don't know.
Like, cause like that
No.
seems fine. That seems
That
fine to
seems
me. Like,
fine.
there's
That
nothing
seems
about
fine.
it's like a new Captain America for a new time. It makes sense, and like I don't think the Little Mermaid being black like changes the story a lot. Yeah, it's a little more forward about the thing, but I think it's done for like a good reason. I can get behind that, and I sort of get the James Bond evolution. Although I wish I didn't kill my character off, but like I get it, and we'll try that in the free market and see what it works. But like, yeah, the Lord of the Rings kind of irked me a little bit. The Star Wars stuff like irked me a lot. Like some of the good, like there's a time when it's done where it's just done with like a sledgehammer. It's done with no like kind of real regard for like the story. And it becomes more about pushing the message than like taking the story and reshaping the story for new people. Because I think there's something nice about repurposing a character or story and like making it more accessible for a particular time. But I think you can do it in a way where you sort of destroy some essence of the original thing, or you do it in a way. This is like what happened with Star Wars, right? When they released Star Wars, I mean, people weren't like super upset that like there were like all these like multiracial, woke, whatever you want to call them, things happening. I think what upset people was that the lady who was in charge of producing Star Wars was basically like, shut the fuck up, nerds, like stop being like racist. And like it was very obvious that she was pushing an agenda over trying to like tell the story and bring it into like a new era. And that's what really got people upset, right? Not so much that there were people with different colors on the screen, right? It was that.
Yeah,
like, and it's sorry,
That's a
go ahead,
good.
Nick.
I was saying that's a good point because I think there was I'm trying to remember his name, but there was an actor, Elba, Idris Elba.
Idris Elba, yeah.
Idris Elba. He was one of the he was up there with Tom Hardy as being like a potential
He would've been
James
epic
Bond.
Bond.
007, and he's a
That guy's
tall, suave, epic actor. He also happens to be African American, and I don't think that would have been anyone would have had any
He's
issue
British,
with that.
bro.
He's
not
British too.
African-American.
He's
He's not
No, it
African
fits the
American.
character.
Oh, yeah,
It's
he's-
totally fine.
okay, yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
he's British.
He's British. He's British.
But
no, he's
but
like
yeah, like-
quintessential Bond.
yeah, exactly. That would have like rolled right in with the kind of character.
But I think that guy would
anyway,
have crushed it. Actually,
he would have.
I agree. I think we're talking about kind of like these nuanced ones, but there's
Yeah,
like much
thank you.
easier examples where
There's
like,
easy ones.
where like inclusivity has gone wrong.
Yes.
You know, like let's talk about gender fluidity in sports, for instance.
Yeah, and I appreciate you pointing that out, Eric, because I also felt there are really difficult ones, and then there are just the obvious ones, and the difficult ones are just a byproduct of like this whole thing, like where they're really it's okay, like it's fine.
So
Like,
let's just like identify some lower hanging fruit. Like we follow this guy on Twitter, Zuby. He's a musician. He's a black dude, but he's a guy, and I think he set a world record for deadlifting in women's deadlifting. Is this accurate?
Yeah, he did it a while ago as like it was obviously like a stunt,
Right.
right? I mean, he's a rapper, I think, right? But he's also like a anti-woke kind of like culture warrior type, and like he's just does a lot of engagement farming on Twitter. But yeah, he like posted a video a while ago where he said like I just broke the women's deadlift record because identified as
on
a
his
woman
application
while I
he
lifted this
identified as a
weight.
woman. Like that was he just said
It
I'm a
wasn't even
woman
an application.
today.
He just literally just was like he posted a video of himself deadlifting. He's a
Oh,
big dude.
yeah,
Deadlifts
but
a lot.
For that
He-
video he identified as a woman.
Yeah, he can deadlift more than the world's like the women's deadlift, right? And he's just like I am identifying as a woman, and he deadlifts, and he's like, I've now broken the thing, and like, it obviously caused a bunch of controversy because I think it. I mean, this is like a whole nother like topic that we could easily like unpack for forever, but like it hit at like a point that's like there's like some sort of like truth there, which is that like there's no we've gone from the realm of like doing things that are sort of like measurable and quantifiable to doing things that are sort of immeasurable and just like sort of internally driven. Like we live in this like world of like, you know, there is no truth. There's just like my truth is kind of like the divide between people. And this is like the essence of that, right? It's just like,
if you insult my truth, then you have a big price to pay. But the goalpost is always moving and the terms are always moving of my truth. So you'll never actually know how to address me appropriately with the right pronouns. Did you guys know I'm getting some crazy insights lately from the world of education? Did you guys know, like, for real, there are children that transition, like, commonly?
Like 5-year-olds?
Yes. No, like 10, like, ish, you know, like, and then middle school, like, as early as, like, late elementary, early middle school, like, fully transition, like change their
physiologically
name from, like,
transitioned or just mentally transitioned?
It's a great question. Like, appearance, and I think some... I don't know the details of like the degree to which they've gone through physiological hormonal therapy, but I do know like they have completely changed gender identification, name, dress, everything, and obviously that process doesn't always happen overnight, right? And you have to think about the parents and how difficult that is for some, and then for others. I think it's very obvious that the parents are actually the ones behind it. I mean, that's like very clear as day that some parents are the cause, and other times the child is the one sort of pushing the initiative of transitioning, and the parents are just like, what do we do? Like, we're dealing with what the culture is giving us. But commonly, I think the parents are actually at the root of the issue, which is really terrifying, and they think they're coming from a good place as well, which is, I mean, we definitely need to do an episode on this topic because this is too much to just quickly
about getting into this with like
quickly,
a 10-minute conversation because it's very complicated. But it is something that is at the forefront of the culture war, right? Like this is like the ultimate culture war question, like the whole question of like gender identity and all this stuff. Like it's very, it's interesting, like how there are certain memes that sort of just evolve. There's this like mimetic theory, right, that basically says that because we now have social media, there's all this engagement going back and forth between humans, or these like networks that are kind of sharing ideas back and forth, much in the same way that like organisms over time sort of like evolve through all these like iterations. Like they survive long enough and then they mutate, and then that mutation survives and it mutates over and over again. A lot of these ideas, I think, that we're talking about now that are at the forefront of the culture war, they started off as like sort of like a little one of like a billion tiny little memes or ideas that were spreading on social. But the ones that like seem to have this like traction, right? Like the best ones are the ones that they drive this like insane engagement from both the left and the right. Those things sort of seem to get traction and like evolve, right? And then the arguments for them from both sides spread and evolve because they feed into the engagement formulas of the algorithms, right? And then you get to this end state where you have these people like arguing over like gender ideology online, and both sides are throwing out these kind of one-liners back and forth that have like evolved over like millions of iterations to be sort of like maximally irritating or whatever, and like really driving people crazy because they're just like perfectly hitting on the nerves of everything. And it's not necessarily like intentional, but it's like an evolutionary process. I don't think it really happened before social media, or if it did, it was like a much slower, like multi-year or multi-generational process. And now we're seeing like new stuff come up like crazy. Like we can't even keep up with it anymore. I mean, there's probably stuff happening right now on, you know, TikTok that we're not even aware of. It's kind of wild.
And this is like the part that grinds my gears the most. It's like this entire thing just seems to find its way into every possible domain, and it doesn't belong there. So, for example, like all of a sudden people are like, whoa, World Cup, soccer, cool. You know, a lot of people for the first time, Argentina, France, can't even point to it on a fucking map. And then they come and they say stupid comments like, what's up with this Argentina team and why is everyone white? This
That
is
was
the
an actual
equivalent.
comment.
This
From
is the,
a- from a
Ask the
journalist.
coach that?
dude,
From a journalist asking, how come there are no black players on your team, to the coach.
this is the equivalent of like you can do so many examples.
Hold on,
of
what did the
this.
coach say? Just curious.
I don't
what
have
the
it.
coach
Do you?
I think so because we're a country, not a Disney movie.
This isn't a live press conference?
Yeah, dude, that's so good.
That's so good.
I don't know. Like you can find it. It definitely happened. Might not have. I don't know if it was the coach or the commissioner or whatever. But yeah, this was a question that was asked, and that was the retort. That was.
I mean,
Yeah,
what a
it's just-
stupid, misplaced question. And just like you said, Armand, doesn't deserve to be in
No.
every kind of part of our lives.
No, I mean it's kind of like saying it's not to this level of extreme because there is diversity within Argentina, but it is basically like saying like why are there no black players on the Japan national team? And it's just
Okay, so
ridiculous.
this gets to
just-
something you
it's
were
just insane.
talking about earlier, which is you're like, well, how do we solve it? Which I think is just not going to happen, right? I think that's kind of pie in the sky, and we could talk about why this even exists in the first place. But the way it's being fought isn't productive, right? Because the sort of whatever we want to call them, the woke side or whatever label you want to put on people who like this. There's this idea that like you're going to solve the problem by simply like installing quotas, right? Like as long as you just like, oh, I want like more people of color to be in these movies or in these positions. Like as long as we just insert them everywhere, then we solve the problem. Like as long as we just insert this ideology everywhere, then we solve the problem, right? And it's totally misplaced, right? Because if your goal is acceptance, right, as I would argue it should be, right, like when the gays fought their battle over the last few decades, right? I think this is actually a really good example. The example of the gay movement versus the example of like the transgender movement that's going on right now. People were like won over by like the game. We had like Will and Grace on TV, and like there was this real compassion people had because they were sort of like educated on it and they were made to feel like empathetic. And like nobody I know at this point in my life like has anything against gay people. I know those people are out there, but nobody in my circles. It's just like it's a war. I feel like that was won because it wasn't really ever like a war. It was like it was more of like it was convincing, right? They were sort of making arguments and an argument to empathy. Whereas what's happening now is like very authoritarian. They're not making emotional arguments to convince people so much. They're basically like, this is the way it is. If you don't believe this, you're a fucking bigot. Like, and we're just going to insert this shit everywhere until like we get our way and the world just becomes what we want it. It's not very effective, right? And then people are obviously like reacting to that in a way that they haven't reacted to other movements to the same degree, right? So I feel like the way it's, regardless of what side you're on, like the way it's being fought from the left of this, like it just makes no sense to me on most all fronts.
It makes
like they're
no
fighting
sense
from a forceful standpoint.
It makes no sense, but I have to
well
admit,
said, by the way.
I have to acknowledge that as a person who used to be susceptible to this type of thinking, you look at the entire problem as something that needs to be burned to the ground. The only solution to you from that vantage point is to recreate everything. Everything is broken. Everything is corrupt. Everything is irreparable. The only solution is something almost akin to like full-blown anarchy. Like it needs to be recreated from the ground up. And so I think that's why a lot of this ideology and the culture war is so difficult and why it steps into territories that it does not belong in. I think that's why it's so aggressive in nature, because that's part of the ideology. We need to recreate everything. We're not trying to recreate a few institutions here. We're not saying that a few institutions are racist or broken or sexist or just dumb and not evolving fast enough. They they want to just completely change everything. And I used to get high off that shit. I used to get excited by that shit. I mean, you guys all at one point were in that world too, like where it just happens as it's a byproduct of being young, right? When you're young and living in a liberal place like California and you're surrounded by that, that's just the way of thinking. And so it's just a common thing that just like takes over your whole identity.
Can I kind of like zoom out from myself and look at how I view this stuff critically, and you guys can like poke holes in how I'm feeling? Because like I experience this like dissonance whenever I am exposed to like, you know, whatever we're calling like ableist language or whatever. I kind of just like, I'm immediately like, fuck off. But you know, like when I zoom out from it, I can see what you guys are saying, and like what Steven mentioned earlier, it's just testing the Overton window. I think that's fair. Like, you know, 100 years ago we were dropping the N-bomb left and right, and now that's no longer acceptable. We all agree that that's not an acceptable term to use. To now start to question that further and be like, well, what about this other language? I think it's kind of fair. You know, I do experience this dissonance immediately where I'm like, nah, fuck you. Like, let me just live my life. But I kind of get it. You know, I do see like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't be using X, Y, Z terms. Maybe.
It's a slippery slope, right? Like, you nailed it. It is like an Overton window thing, right? Which is a nice catch-all for being like, this is acceptable and this isn't, and like we can't actually reason this through with math. It's just what society says, right? And like this is similar to like the Hollywood stuff we were talking about earlier, right? Where a lot of the stuff we see going on in Hollywood today is sort of like a byproduct of something that started with very good intentions that was, I think, needed, that has now sort of gone haywire because it's gone unchecked, right? Like, and this stuff can kind of swing. Like it wasn't good that we had people, like we had white people in like the 50s, like putting on blackface and playing black people and putting like squinty eyes and playing Asian people. That stuff was weird and cringy, and nobody wants that anymore, right? But it's gotten to the point now where, like, you know, Scarlett Johansson will play like a disabled woman in a movie, and then people will be like rioting in the streets because they didn't get like a handicapped person to play the role. And at a certain point in time, you're just like, okay, where do we just cross the boundary into like, this just isn't acting anymore? Like we have to like we can't pretend to do anything. It can go totally out of control. And it's the same thing with language. Like, I think we'd all agree there are some certain words that we shouldn't have like in the culture, right? But then you also can obviously take that so far to the point where like everybody is tripping over themselves to not offend anybody, or like there's like a sort of critical mass of people in society that you have to care about, and like a line that you have to care about, and then below that you just have to kind of like live and let live, because otherwise it's nuts. Like the Stanford stuff that you guys sent me today, like you can't say the word insane anymore. Like that's offensive now. We can't use stand-up meeting in like our businesses because that's offensive to people like who can't stand up. Like it's so out of it.
You can't use the word user. You have to use client, not the word user, because user is often associated with someone who uses, as in someone who has substance abuse issues or those who exploit others for their own gain.
Oh my God, what was the guy who got stuck on the elevator?
Oh yeah, I was laughing, by the way, while you were talking, because I was looking at this.
Right here. I have that
Go ahead,
right
Armand.
It's someone in their Slack, in their company
that's
Slack.
a WeWork Slack, right?
Yeah. No, well, they were in a WeWork.
Oh no, they're in the WeWork. Yeah,
they're in the WeWork. He's like, this is Pragon Dua. Guys, all caps. I'm stuck in the WeWork lift. Slackbot, the sort of the Slack sort of monitoring system that the company had set up in advance to make sure people don't use the word guys anymore going forward, says, hi, guys is a gendered pronoun. We recommend alternatives like folks, all, everyone, y'all, team, crew. We appreciate your help in building an inclusive workplace at Head Out. And then he goes, folks, again in all caps, I'm stuck in the WeWork lift. Like, help me, I'm dying.
He had a surprisingly tempered response to the situation.
Yeah, I know. I would have been like, fuck you, Slackbot. I think that the word, and yeah, by the way, beating a dead horse, can't say that anymore because it might make people go actually like abuse a horse, and animal rights activists have to stand up for that one.
The best one on that list is that you can't say trigger warning anymore. And
Yes.
it's funny because trigger warning was originally invented by the people who were like an earlier
Yes.
generation of the people making this list.
Yes.
And it's just, there's something about this like ideology, right? Whatever you want to call it, where when you take it to like an extreme, it just becomes like a
falls
snake,
apart.
like eating its own tail. It
Yes.
just turns on itself at a certain point because there are no like stopping points. There's
Dude,
no
great
there's no
analogy.
walls. There's no mat. There's nothing at all. Like everything is just
Great analogy.
completely subjective, right? And so
They-
eventually it starts turning on itself. And like the fact that like the original, woke language is now turning on like the old woke, and then pretty soon like this is the problem. In the future, there'll be like half the words on this list we'll figure out a reason to say like those are no good anymore. And at a certain point in time, it's just like why? Like what?
But do you want to
what
allow
are we doing?
the free market to decide? Like, I think it's fair to ask the question, like, is this language inappropriate? And then, you kind of like posit that, and then, the citizens can be like, no, it's actually, we're okay. Like that's fine.
I'm totally in
That's-
favor of that. Like the market can do what it wants, but like we also reserve our right to mock it if we want to.
push back,
And that's
yeah.
like how society is supposed to work. Like,
Right,
you
that's
your life
it.
however you want. Like do these things. Like as long as you're not really like affecting me, go for it. But like don't tell me how to think, and don't tell me like what the nature of reality is, right? Like and don't tell me to not laugh at you if you do something that I think is stupid. Like this is the price we pay
No,
to live in a
that's part of the
quote-unquote
free market.
society.
That's part of how the free market works. They're going to push back, and then you're going to push back, and then we end up somewhere.
I think that, to kind of start to bring this home and try to get to, please God help me guys, get to some kind of like hope here. The part of this, why it's called a culture war, I realized as we were talking, in particular, both sides really, what they're doing is they're stepping into, in a place of war, you are attacking and assaulting, right? And it's not just like some debate, because a debate for the most part, like you leave the integrity of what already existed alone. And what you find with a lot of like this wokest ideology is that they are stepping into the past, stepping into the way things already are. And rather than being forward looking and building the future that they want to see, and then saying, hello, citizens, please show us in this system with your votes, with your dollars, what you would like to see. They're not doing that. They're doing it at the cost of the present and the past. What I wish we would see is like, you want to see a different world? You want to see a better world? Show it to me. And my dollars and my vote and my time and my energy will go toward what you show me is better. But they can't do that. That's not enough. And so they go do these things like what we've been talking about today. And it seeps into every institution and area of life until the point where it becomes unmanageable. And people are running around like chickens with their fucking heads cut off, not knowing what is left from right. Like no one is talking any sense anymore. And that's why I'm personally just so frustrated over it. It's like, I'm approaching a limit here of like, it already was unuseful, but it just feels like it's become so unproductive and so unuseful to be aware of each of these events that they're just kind of like, I'm ready to just completely cut all of it out. And I don't know if that means like just getting off social media to a certain degree or what, but like, I kind of feel like we just have to sit out the next like 5 to 8 years, because it's just going to be more of this conversation. And I don't see it getting better. I see it getting worse. And that's what I'm personally concerned about. I don't see it getting worse to the point where the culture war swings in the direction of like a total crazy totalitarian state where the Overton window shrinks to nothingness. Because that is, dude, Stephen, that analogy, it's so funny you said that about the snake eating its own tail. Like that is literally what I was like envisioning. It's like they come out and they say like, don't trigger me. You can't say those things. It's trigger warning. And then now you're not allowed to say trigger warning because that's very subjective and only I should be allowed to tell you if something triggers me. You don't get to tell me that this might trigger me. It's like, are you fucking insane? And by the way, insane is one of the words that you're not allowed to use anymore. So I fucking quit. Like, how do you deal with it anymore? Like, what do you
is
do?
going wild right now.
Yeah, he's not going insane. That's for sure. You can't say that.
It's going wild.
How do you deal with
mean,
that shit anymore?
I see where you're coming from. I get your frustration, and Normally, well, a little while ago, I would have told you, like, look, this isn't a big deal, right? This is sort of like the Nassim Taleb, like, vegan at dinner problem, where there's this, like, really vocal minority that is sort of spreading stuff throughout everywhere, and people just kind of go along with it because they don't care as much and they want to be nice, right? And I think that's how this stuff was for a long time. I think the vast majority of people are like us, where they're just like, like, not trying to be a dick, but also like, we're somewhere in the middle going along with stuff. And the problem now is, like, we've talked about the idea that, like, you can have like a great product or great distribution, and like stuff that has a terrible product often tries to control distribution. And we've used this analogy for like mainstream media, right? Like the product is really, really bad now. So they're trying to basically lock down the distribution and like force you to only consume their product, control the networks where it's distributed, the algos and all that stuff, instead of just making the product good because the product sucks. But the same thing is kind of happening now with the culture war stuff. And I think that's why it's really escalated, like, especially from the right, who I think was like sort of lying down and taking it for a little bit. These ideas, I think, are not super popular with like most people, but the problem now is that they're trying to get into the distribution, right? They've already crept into the college institutions, right? They've become institutionalized there. Then they became institutionalized in a lot of the sort of like Silicon Valley type workplaces that you used to work in, and that like people I know work in. And now they're getting into like the elementary schools, which is why I think stuff is like really gotten heated, and you've seen a lot of stuff happen, obviously, and like with like Florida and DeSantis, and like that's kind of like, I think that was kind of like the final straw for people on the right, because I think a lot of them were like, oh, whatever, college is stupid anyway, dumb libs, and then a lot of them were like, whatever, Silicon Valley's, who cares, freaking latte sipping libs in their Teslas. But now they've all got kids, and their kids go to school, and now this is like hitting the nerve, and I think that's why stuff's really getting crazy right now.
I think it's also getting crazier than ever because, and I'm glad we didn't really go into this in this episode, we've covered it in the last couple episodes, but like with Twitter and free speech, look, like when you start debating not just like what's acceptable to say, but what people can say at all in the first place, and their civil liberties in the First Amendment, you're now embarking upon this is like full-blown war, right? Like this is really serious at this point. And the winner of that battle, I mean, again, like he's been making a lot of weird moves lately, but like Elon saying that the reason that he's fighting for this, forget Elon, whoever wants to fight for the integrity of speech, because knowing that shapes the narrative and thinking of society, that is an incredibly noble aim. And someone better fight for that. We need to fight for that. If we don't fight for that, like it's over. Like why would we be any different than any other totalitarian system if we didn't fight for free speech? Why? How would it be any different? Like that's what we're fighting for. We're fighting to make sure that our lives don't turn into a dystopian movie. It's no different. Like that's why the dystopian movies exist. I had this moment of hope actually last week where I realized, I'm like, why do we creatively focus so much on like dystopian outcomes? And I realized it's because it's a warning sign. It's an artistic symbol of don't allow this to happen. It isn't so much that that's the reality we're creating, because I used to worry if we spend so much of our creative energy, and we can wrap here, if we spend so much of our creative energy working toward, spending it on what the worst situation might look like, are we just going to end up creating that? And then I realized, I'm like, no. You know what? These are artifacts. These are artistic, beautiful, multi-million-dollar endeavors to imprint and stamp into the history of humanity to show the future generation, don't give up free speech, because if you do, this is what the world will look like. Don't give up your ability to think independently and publish your material and ideas, because if you do, this is what the world will look like. So that gives me hope. Yeah.
Well,
I don't know.
I have a lot of stuff I want to say with regards to that, but maybe we should
I
save
know.
it for another time. I'll just say that like it's interesting. Like I was hearing you say all that stuff, and I was like, wow, this is I think you're actually coming at this from what used to be a very, I would say, classical liberal perspective, but is now more of a right wing perspective. And I think people on the left wouldn't necessarily say that they're anti free speech, but they would say that your free speech is sort of like my oppression in a particular way. And I wonder if we're really making the right arguments to convince people on the other side who might not be coming at it from the same perspective that we are.
All right. I think that's good. I saw in the DMs it's a good time to wrap, so I think we shall wrap. See you guys in the live episode.
We could have taken that a little.
I know,
We could take that
dude.
for 7 hours.
I
sure.
know.
Well, we'll do it again. We'll do it again. Part 2.
We'll do it. It's
We have
not
a
going
podcast.
anywhere. Don't worry.
It's a good thing we have
Yeah,
one.
That's cool.
I know.
All right.
guys.
Good chat, guys.
Much love.
Let's wrap it.
Peace.
Sweet.
Bye.